is a pain in the butt. You hit your ball in the trees and then you lip out the putt. But if you've got a little time, then come and spend it with us. 'Cause now you're listening to the Rough Cut.
Hello, 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 and welcome down to the Rough Cut Golf Podcast. On this momentous day, we can officially declare the golf season open as the Masters has come to its conclusion and everyone is primed, ready and raring to get on the fairways to make that ball go in the hole. Guys, welcome Jacob and Mick.
That is essentially all it is though, isn't it?
I'll just explain golf. Kieran is not with us. He is about to go on holiday to Italy, so he's abandoned the team in favour of preparing his Aperol spritzes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is that what Brooks losing on the final day and doesn't want to turn up to work?
Hold on. The last time Kieran went to Italy, all he had was Guinness.
Yeah, but I think this is more of a sophisticated wedding.
It's going to be a wedding, yeah. So there'll be far fewer Aperol spritzes.
Absolutely. Before we launch into dissect what happened this week in Augusta, Georgia, it is beholden on us to let you know that there is an amazing video which has just come out on our challenge. The Golfbidder Challenge is back, ladies and gentlemen. After a 3-year hiatus, we are picking our clubs in the Golfbidder warehouse, which you can check out via this link here and on the main channel at Peter Finch Golf. However, that is not what you're here to see, to listen to be a part of. It's all about the Masters. And what do we think? Guys, did you enjoy watching? Did you manage to catch it all?
Yes. I caught as much as was possible to catch, having also driven to Market Harborough, driven to London, and then driven back to Manchester over the course of the 3 days of the weekend. But yeah, I caught quite a lot of it, in fact. Much more than I thought I was going to be able to get. I think the time made it kind of much more doable this time around.
Yeah, Mick is a long distance haulage driver in his spare time.
Yeah, I drive.
Just a hobby.
I drive one of those Eddie Stobarts.
Right.
Yeah. So if you ever see me, just do this, and I'll honk the horn.
No, I thought it was a good tournament. It was. I wouldn't say any more than that. Just good.
Just good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I had a full weekend birthday party to attend.
Wow.
Which it's my sister and brother-in-law's birthday,
weekend?
like days apart. Yeah, it was. It's my brother-in-law's 40th and kind of my sister's birthday as well. So they made like a big thing of it. I let my displeasure be known.
Yeah.
I was a bit of a party pooper.
On the Masters weekend.
Just wearing a green jacket to the party.
Yeah, I must admit I let it be known, but thankfully they did put it on in the living room, so I could dip back in. And the main party day was Saturday, which turned out to be a washout anyway. So.
I was going to say one of the things we were talking about before we hit record was that, like, imagine if you had you'd saved your entire life, and you tell your dad and like, Dad, we're going to the Masters. I've got us a ticket for one day of the Masters, and it ends up to be the Saturday when it's hammering down, and you only see about 9 holes worth of golf.
And unbeknown to you that you're actually endangering yourself because trees are falling all over the place.
Yeah. Oh, we will get onto that. We will get onto that. Yeah. But let's not start this podcast out with all the negatives from Augusta.
No, absolutely not.
No. Let's start out with some of the positives. Jon Rahm bagged his second major and a green jacket. So halfway to the career Grand Slam, and I would say one of the players out there at the moment who could complete it realistically.
Is that the measure now? Is it like, there's two people, 3 people who have done it?
So the thing in the last 50 years, I think there's only 3 players. Yeah. Or was that the last 80 years maybe? Because like some of these guys were like Saracen, for example.
Right, okay.
So we are talking about a very, very select number of players. Yeah. Like winning a major in golf is exceptionally hard to do. Winning 4 majors is unbelievably hard.
4 entirely different majors
is the absolute pinnacle, which is why you don't see that many people do it. You know, you think about the great players from the last 30 years, if you think about Phil Mickelson, how many majors he's won, he could not get that US Open over the line.
Is it just because those tournaments are so different from each other? Like, I can understand like Augusta and, you know, St Andrews being very different styles of golf, but are the PGA and the US Open much different? Like, how what do you have to have to enable you to do well in all four of those different types of rounds of golf?
So each one of those courses is a different test for a start. So we all know Augusta. You know, we all know you've got to have amazing short game. Experience of that course is very important as well. If you think about what happens at the US Open, it's just a brutal test. You know, you've got to have your driving on point. You've got to be accurate. You've got to be long. You've got to have a very high threshold of pain in many respects, because it is going to test every single aspect of your game. USPGA, not quite sure what that is yet. It's become more of a shootout. It's actually become probably the most interesting, closely formed major over the last few years. And then the Open is so weather dependent, and obviously the conditions of the grass and everything else is so different. So each of these tournaments requires a really different skill set, which is why if you do win the Grand Slam, you are considered such a complete golfer.
Yeah, you have to be able to not only be able to play well over those courses, but also to have like such a good group of 4 rounds of golf on a specific weekend at a specific course, and hope that no one else, you know, has their same run in that weekend as well. So very rare. Do you reckon Rahm does it before Rory ends up?
I was just
going to
say that you've got 3 guys now, haven't you, with Mickelson, Speith, and Rory?
Oh, Speith! I forgot about Speith.
They're all got the opportunity. They're one off.
Yeah.
Do you think Rahm is now the best positioned to actually beat them all?
I think he could do it this year if he wanted to.
I think he could be.
Let's not get too carried away for a start. I mean,
He could be.
come on.
I don't know.
He's obviously an amazing player, and he has just won the Masters, and it's very tempting to say whenever any player wins a major, how many is he going to win? What's he going to win?
The recency bias is very real.
Exactly. And you've got players out there like Rory, who is one step away from the Grand Slam by winning the Masters, and we've been sat here for the last decade talking about how he should win, why he should win, and he's still not won. It's hard. Yeah. It is really hard to do. But the way that Rahm won it yesterday, it was... I mean, it was on Sevy's birthday. You had Ollie welcoming him off the green.
Yeah, that was cool.
It was like a real emotional moment. But to be honest, it was a little bit of a procession at the end.
Yeah. Again, it's the second year in a row where someone has been so far ahead that there's kind of not been any real competition coming up 16, 17 and 18. So it was a bit like, oh, cool, Rahm won it, and now he's got 3 more holes to play. Yeah,
it just felt a bit... I mean, any time that a player has to hit a provisional... off the last tee.
God, that's so relatable. I loved it.
And there's still no threat. If you haven't watched it, basically Rahm kind of pulled his last tee shot straight left. It smashed into the trees, popped back, and based off that tee, you are looking at it's 120 yards off that tee max down there, and he couldn't see where it finished, so he had to hit a provisional ball. But when he got down there, that camera behind as they walked to the fairway, and he had the marshal with like the yellow flag, literally looking like he was marshalling a group of 20 handicappers down there. Oh, that was fantastic.
Because it hit the tree and then bounced out into the middle of the fairway, which is so typical of someone who wins a tournament, isn't it?
It bounced back quite a long way as well.
Right, okay,
but
got you.
It was one of those things, and this is so. Even though he did that, I mean, you can get into those trees and you can find it. So even if he'd had chipped out and got a bogey, still would have won.
Oh, it would have been fine,
it still would have been comfortable. So.
Yeah, you can 4-putt the last green and still win them.
Which is the whole charm with that course, and the whole, you know, the things we've seen over the years with guys coming down the stretch and getting to Amen Corner, and you've got 4 guys all on the same score.
Yeah.
And that 12th tee shot looks a little bit harder, and that approach to 13 looks a little bit harder, and the water's always in play.
Yeah.
But for the last 2 years now, we've just got they can hit it in the water and they're still fine.
Yeah.
And it just takes away that element of suspense, I suppose, of that something is going to happen.
It felt like once Rahm got through 12's
That's
the hole,
it, isn't it? Yeah.
12's the hole that can really derail somebody if they whack it in the water there. But once he got through 12, once he hit that, for me, probably the best shot of that last round was that kind of draw that he hit around the corner of 13.
Yeah.
especially given the fact that how he's just been hitting this power fade the whole way around, and then
just managed to switch it.
Yeah.
I know, he's just. You were like early in the year. You were like, Rahm's going to be a problem because he's learned to draw the ball now.
Yeah,
Like,
but you could see exactly what, and this is a mark for me of a really great player, is that you work on a certain aspect of your game for specific moments. So just imagine how many times Jon Rahm, natural fader of the golf ball, sees everything pretty much from left to right, would have worked on a specific shot for that specific moment, for that specific tournament, so he could put himself in a position to win.
you imagine he's been like on any range he's on, he's like, right, I'm going to draw it off that, and imagine I'm hitting that tee shot at Augusta because you're going to come up against it, and you know it's required. Like if you hit a fade there, you're in the pine straw, or if you hit if you hit it straight, like you go through the fairway, don't you? So
I just love it. I love that. I just love the thought of Jon Rahm just grinding for hours and hours and hours and hours just to figure out a fade for that one shot, draw for that one shot.
They were mentioning how Rahm has gone about trying to hit that draw, and the two things that they were basically talking about is that he's just got to stood a little bit closer to the ball and then just put the ball back in his stance a little bit, and that's
a bit more forward.
Yeah. Oh, right. Okay,
yeah.
forward.
So what he's there's a little bit of a assessment going on of his club head at address is like a foot at points way far back from the ball because the ball's like way up in his stance, so he can. He's already turning his hands around by the time he hits it.
Well, it's a bit of a weird one actually, because when you move the ball, if we're going to get a little bit
come on, let's get technical.
If you move the ball further forward in the stance, it's actually harder to move the club more from the inside.
Well, that's why I thought he would be back.
Yeah. So basically, what happens is if you the further you move the ball back in the stance, because of the way that angle of attack, swing arc works, the club will meet the ball sooner, so it's more likely to be coming from an inside path. If you move the ball further forward in the stance, you're actually more likely to swing outwards to get to it. So the club is more likely to be moving left. So what we're seeing with Rahm is he's moved the ball further forward in the stance. The club is getting there a little bit later, so it's actually moving a little bit more left. So it's effectively a pull draw.
Okay.
How odd.
Yeah.
But that's the way he has to hit his draw, and it works.
Yeah, so when you see him aiming, his draw shot finishes left is where he's aiming. Whereas you look at Rory, his draw finishes where he is aiming. Just because of like his swing is
so he hits it out and it comes back to the line.
Yeah. So it just shows there's a million ways to do it. I mean, when you watch Hovland play, he aims a long way right, cuts across himself, and plays a pull fade most of the time.
Wow.
There's a million different ways to play this game.
Yeah. I think Rahm's victory was made slightly easier by the fact that Brooks didn't show up for the last kind of
didn't show up for the last round and a
half of the tournament.
You know what? It was really disappointing. I think it was.
I'm not saying anything, by the way.
From the
Stay out of it.
From the ninth hole on the third round. Yeah, which let's be honest, we know that the final round, the final day was made a lot more complex by the amount of holes they had to play.
Correct.
Conditions were obviously very, very, very tough. But he didn't have a birdie from the ninth hole on the third round until the 13th hole of the last round, and within that he had 6 bogeys, so 6 over.
Yeah.
And if you're looking to win a major, that's obviously not going to get it done. And to be honest, I'm very much on the fence with Brooks. I want to like him.
Yeah.
But there's something that I just can't quite get around. The Netflix documentary with him I thought was really weird.
Yeah, it didn't help, did it?
No. But I just thought the one thing you would say about Brooks is that he is a competitor. He is able to show up in those big moments, and he just, like the rest of the field really around Rahm, kind of faded.
Yeah.
It was left to Mickelson, Speith to make the charges, and they were so far back.
Mickelson? What?
Yeah.
Where the hell did that come from?
Yeah, exactly. Where did it come from?
Because absolutely absurd.
Because he's been playing pants all year, and then all of a sudden he just turns it on in the Masters. It's obviously, of course, he's got very good memories of. So.
Yeah, that does. I imagine that would help. Yeah, two guys. You do see this, and we saw that last year with Rory and Colin. If you've got two guys playing well with each other on a final day, and they can just sort of pull each other along. I think they both shot 6 under, 7 under for the last day. If you're going back and forth, that's definitely going to help you, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. It's just that momentum. It's the way that you build off each other.
And nothing to lose, I guess, as well. Like, they can just go for it.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
take on pins. And
you know what? You're absolutely right there. There's no... If they have a bogey in their mindset at that point, it's like, it's fine. Let's just go get another birdie.
Yeah.
Like, you just got to keep pushing, where someone at the top of the leaderboard may be a bit more defensive.
Yeah.
And I think that's what made it just slightly... No, I'm not going to say damp squib because that's not the right word, but definitely less exciting than you would expect a Masters to be, is because all of the challenges came from so far back that we're never going to win.
yeah.
Yeah, and we'll get into our kind of takes on the coverage in a bit, but it did feel like they were like, and of course they should be showing Rahm and Koepka because they're kind of battling it out at the top, but we didn't really see any of those people who were making a little bit of a late charge until you're like, oh my gosh, like Phil's 6 under or 7 under. You're like, wow, I haven't seen him for the entire weekend.
Yeah, I saw a lot of Speith, saw a lot of his putts kind of drop in.
Yeah.
But it must be tough because I mean the broadcasters will when they're viewing this stuff, when they're deciding what to show, I think they'll get it. They'll understand, like, well, no one's making a charge here, so we've got to stick with the two main guys.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where I really wanted Rahm to win, but it got to the point where I was like, I kind of hope he chucks in a couple of bogeys just to make this a bit more exciting.
Literally, Jacob was like, just need him to hold, just like lip one of these out.
Something to happen.
Let Brooks back in for the last 2 holes.
Well, you talk about the guys that were positioned and could have been challengers. There was a point in like 5 holes in that it was teeing itself up perfectly. Rahm had dropped back, Brooks had dropped back.
Yeah.
You had Hovland, who was still on 8 under. Then he made that 5 on the par 3 on the 6th.
Oh,
Disgusting, though. Isn't it?
Cantlay obviously had a bit of a dodgy start, but managed to go back-to-back birdies and get himself back to even and 6 under for the day.
And you had a little bit of a stake in Cantlay because you'd told
Well,
everyone last
yeah.
week that he was going to win the bloody tournament.
Yeah, well,
You know,
look, I'm still okay with what I said.
No, listen, it was
Look,
good.
he was there on the last day. His stats, I had a little bit of a look after. He was 3rd in approach play, strokes gained. He was 3rd in approach play off the tee, or tee to green, sorry. It was the putting. That was what let him down this week, which usually is a good strong ping. So, you know.
it was also...
So I'm sorry if you lost money on Jacob calling out.
we definitely
You're
would.
with me, so we'll lose together.
If Cantlay won, we definitely would have had a betting partner at this point because of
100%.
that.
Hey, wait till the USPGA. I've got some right takes.
Unfortunately, if Cantlay had won, you would have also had, I think, probably the most unpopular major champion from a single round of golf that you may have ever
Do we know
seen.
if he has actually finished yet? I don't know. He might is he still going? I don't know.
Well, we're talking
He's slow.
We're
Yeah.
talking about players dragging each other along, and then we talk about players dragging each other down. There's, I would say, almost no doubt that Hovland's chances were not. I'm not saying they were scuppered by the way that Cantlay was playing, but it would not have helped Hovland play his best game when Cantlay was just being so slow. I mean, it came to a head a little bit. It was happening all throughout the round where Hovland was effectively so far ahead of Cantlay after they were hitting their shots that you could see he was just waiting for him to get on with it. And by the time they got to the 13th, Cantlay was still walking down the fairway, and Hovland had got to
He
the
was like
green
at
and
the
played
bridge,
his chip.
wasn't he?
He'd not even crossed the bridge.
Did he not?
Literally not even crossed the bridge. And you could see him walking in the background, and Hovland was playing his shot in just a very blatant hurry.
Yeah,
the
yeah,
hell
yeah,
up.
yeah,
God,
yeah.
This is just getting stupid. And it was becoming more and more apparent. People were getting more and more annoyed about it. And they should be. Like, you shouldn't be taking 5 hours as a 2-ball to finish a round.
Yeah, and I think it also played into Rahm's hands a little bit because Brooks is like known for being very fast, for playing really quickly, and Rahm just had this like laser focus the entire time. So they were getting Hovland and Cantlay were slow, so which meant that they were getting slowed down. And then, Rahm's like, great, I just, apparently went to the toilet 7 times or whatever over the course of the round, which is a great tactic. If you're trying to slow roll, if you're trying to, not be stood there for 5 or 6 minutes before you hit,
He went to the toilet 7 times, and I think he put down like 37 sandwiches.
Oh,
Every
he
time they
was
cut to
eating
him,
a
he
lot
was
of sandwiches,
munching down
yeah.
a sandwich every time I saw it. It was off the tee, munch, off the tee, munch.
It's just anything to take your mind off the fact that you are waiting for the group in front of you. But then, Rahm maybe had that laser-like focus, and Koepka just couldn't handle the fact that they were having to wait on they were sat down on a bench
Yeah, having a chinwag, weren't they?
Yeah, just having a chat. And you could, I think, if you're listening to this, you probably find the picture, but we'll try and find it on the podcast as well if you're watching the video version of Rahm and Koepka weigh-in on the 16th tee.
Yeah.
For Cantlay to put out, and like they were waiting for like 5 minutes. And you just see the look on Brooks's face is an absolute picture.
That's great.
It's just he's not impressed.
What's the rules? Because in order to make the game more exciting, lots of people have had this debate about should there be like a shot clock? Should there be some sort of way that forces a player to get on with it? What's the actual rules on how long you're allowed to take?
There's no set rule on how long a player should take over a shot. It's down to individual tournaments to enforce a good pace of play. So before players go out, normally on a tournament scorecard, there is an expected pace of play. So you are expected to finish this round in 4 hours, 20 minutes, whatever it'll be.
Okay.
And then it's up to the tournament to then say to players, you are running behind or you need to speed this up, you're on the clock. And then if they're repeating the offence, if you want to look at it like that, by slow play, then they could get penalised shots.
Actual shot penalties for playing slowly.
But in these big tournaments, like for obvious reasons, the organisers are a little bit hesitant to do so because what it would mean is that they would have to look at what Cantlay was doing and say, listen, playing slow, you're on the clock. If it continued, right, okay, you got a shot penalty. But then Cantlay could easily turn around and say, well, in the second round, I was playing with Kevin Na or whoever was playing with, I can't remember, and he was playing really slow, so why didn't he get docked a penalty? You've got to make sure that if you're going to do it, it's a blanket, well-organised, consistent rule application. Because if you don't, then it's open to interpretation.
Yeah, like some people's, like if you ask Brooks, they were playing extremely slowly. If you ask someone else who plays slowly, they're like, it's not that bad.
In all fairness, I think you could have asked a Glacier and he would have said that Cantlay was playing slow that day. It was a bit ridiculous by the end. And it was a shame as well because Hovland is one of those characters, is one of those players that people naturally would have rooted for and would have made it more exciting. But he obviously didn't play well, and playing with Cantlay definitely
I would say
help.
In the very, very minimal defence to Cantlay, that course was actually playing quite tough, I thought.
If it takes you more shots to get the ball in the hole, you're going to take longer. This makes sense.
Yeah, and he was taking so many shots. It was brutal at times. It was probably because what you want at Augusta, and literally what people want to see, is they want to see the charges being made by players behind the leaders. They want to hear those roars echoing through the pine trees. They want that feeling of anticipation. They want the knowledge that if a player is putting out on 10, they can hear a roar from down on 12.
Yeah.
They can hear if someone eagles on 13. They're going to hear it on 15, and they're going to wonder what's going on.
Yeah, because but again, you've not got your phone with you, so you can't check what's going on the other holes. So you're like, oh my God, something amazing just happened over there, and now I just have to wait a few minutes while they adjust the board or whatever. So you're like, that's what you want, and I don't feel
it just didn't quite kind of happen. There was a lot of. I would say there was a lot of appreciative applause for fantastic lag putting throughout.
Oh, that was very tactical.
Yeah,
well done.
really good golfers claps going around.
Exactly. It's just good golf. But the course was playing much tougher, and it didn't really allow that many birdies. But well, I mean, you obviously had Phil had a great last round. You had Speith, make these charges. It was out there, but it did seem a little bit tougher than
those guys. Years. They just came from too far back, didn't they? We needed that kind of round from someone in that 6-5 under kind of range, and it just didn't happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, at one point there was a lot of people at 6 under.
Hey, I saw more Russell Henley than I've ever seen before, so that was nice.
Who?
Oh, poor Russ.
Russell Henley,
Never heard of him.
Ball striker.
Never heard of him.
He's a good player. He definitely got a little bit overlooked in the coverage. I like how he plays. Aims left, cuts across himself. Nice little cut in there.
Yeah.
Great putter.
Fan of that?
Yeah, I do.
Great putter.
Okay, good.
Very good putter.
But he's just he's very much like picture perfect tour pro as far as like super clean, just a little bit. He just didn't quite put himself in that contention to really get people on board with him. But Yeah, well, good for him. Good finish. I think the only magic really that stood out for me was Speith Thagala's chip in Tiger.
Yeah, that was nice.
On 16.
So good. Yeah, it was so good. Like, apparently he went through the back at his tee shot on 16, and like, you know, patrons, we're not allowed to call them fans or spectators, had to like part. And apparently someone said to him in the crowd, said, "Oh, do it like Tiger would have done it." And he was like, "Oh, okay, good Lord." And then he literally does it, and you're like, wow, like super, super cool, very magic. And like you said, like one of the only moments that, or particularly for him, like someone who has professed that he's like super humble. He said, like, I don't know if I should really be like a top 30 player in the world, but you know, I'll take it. Like he just enjoys himself. Looks like he always has a smile on his face. So I was excited to see that. Very, very magic. The only other piece of magic, which again wasn't like super, super exciting really, unless you go back and watch it and realize how good it really was that Rahm out of the trees 14.
14.
Yeah.
That was class.
That was like a I can see like him and his caddy explain it, right, I'm just going to try and hit a little bit of a fade out of these trees. I need to keep it low. I want to run it up and then just have it come around and you know, then it happening.
Yeah. It just showed how much control he had over his game at that point. And I kind of think the tee shot 13, not exactly won it for him, but it certainly moved him in the right direction. That for me was just a sign that he was never going to let it go.
Yeah. But he wasn't forced to be overly creative because he didn't spend a lot of time in the trees.
He's just good. Just played a really solid round of golf.
I have a question about 16, and I feel like I'm not alone on this unless I was being completely oblivious. But why the hell on the last round was everyone going at the pin and not using the slope?
Not a clue.
Okay, right.
Have they not seen the highlight reels?
Have they
Augusta?
not watched the Masters before? I don't understand what they were doing.
Been here before, for God's sake.
It was a little bit confusing. So I don't know if the way they set the tees up was a bit different, if the wind was in a direction where it was pushing shots a little bit further left than they expected.
Yeah.
But yeah, to be honest, it was... that's one of the things. It sounds quite sad, but I actually kind of not even looking at the leaders or anything like that. I love 16 on the final day because you know there's a hole-in-one opportunity to come, and no one was trying to do it. Ryan Fox gave the best effort, which was a brilliant shot. But well, like when the commentators say, "And okay, let's go to 16,"
you're like,
okay, what's going to happen? But yeah, it was
quite get it.
You know that you can see what they're going to do. They're going to land it on that slope, run it down, and everyone was just going straight at it over the bunker where there's not much of a landing zone, and then running it past. It's like
it did seem quite strange.
Anyway,
it did seem a very weird way to approach it, especially like I said. You know, everyone knows what you probably should do on that hole, so and it's an easier shot.
Yeah,
to hit it.
There's a big fat part of the green over there.
To hit it out to the right is an easier shot than to go at that pin where it is. It didn't really make a lot of sense. But again, the conditions could have played.
Yeah, I was going to say the only thing that maybe plays into that is that maybe there was a lot of wind that we couldn't see because the weather was so odd this weekend. Like there was a kind of hot sunny day and then a like rainy one and then everyone was like wearing hoodies and stuff. So maybe we were seeing the results of people trying to hit that shot, but the wind pushing it, 15 yards left.
Was it? The thing is though, like over the last few years, certainly since I've been watching the Masters, like the weather is getting more and more kind of inclement at this time of year.
Do you know the only time when the weather wasn't like that was when it was in November?
Yeah, when DJ... Yeah, it was perfect, wasn't it?
Well, maybe they need to move the tournament.
Yeah, I think having the Masters as that starting major for me is still...
nice, yeah.
I'm not going to say it's essential, but for me, it's important. You know, it feels like the season's starting.
Sets the tone.
Could they move it outside of April?
I don't want them moving it to that November one.
No.
Because like you saw, DJ just ripped it up. And I don't want Augusta to be like that.
I think moving it to the end of April, potentially even the start of May, just to give it a bit more time.
You can't guarantee good weather anywhere.
No,
but if it's going to be like it was in November every year in Augusta, in Georgia.
Maybe they just need to move the tournament to California.
I'd take that. I'd
just shift Augusta.
I'd take that over rainy season Augusta any day of the week.
Yeah, I think with where that is in the world, I mean, I'm not a meteorologist,
Yeah.
but just by anecdotal experience, the seasons do seem to be changing a little bit, where certainly in the UK and pretty much elsewhere that I know about, is that where you would see April being really nice, it's still a bit wet, and now it's moving later on. So like October in the UK is always like a pretty crap month until like the last 5-6 years. It's actually getting much better.
Nice bit of global warming for you there.
Yeah, shifting stuff around.
Climate change.
So could it be moved? Could it be moved to start in May?
What if
a couple of weeks is not terrible.
What if it was the last major of the year?
No.
And you're like, everything's building, then you've...
I like the Open being the last one.
I think that's one of the things. I mean, they changed the order of them. So the USPGA used to be the last major of the year, and then a few years ago they shifted that. So the Open, British Open, is the last major of the year, and I do like it.
Yeah,
so I think it feels
like a build.
Yeah, it feels a real good build up to it. I think that the USPGA does have its own space now, so which is obviously in May. So shifting the Augusta there's a little bit of a tricky spot, but I think the order that they've got the majors in is good. It's just if they can potentially move it a little bit later on, just to give it a bit more of a chance. But honestly, I don't know. I'm not a meteorologist. Like that.
Are you not?
Thing is, the next year that it might just be absolutely glorious for 4 days, and it's just you don't know. But
then also like it plays a little bit into the debate of like, should they be doing something to make the game harder for the pros? Like the weather is like, the course is difficult, but then like the weather also adds, the weather is one of the main defenses of, the links courses that the Open is played on, because the wind has such a massive effect on flight and, club selection and control and all those things. So like, it's not a terrible thing that it was, some strange weather, but it's also not great for us to watch it. Because
we don't. We didn't get to watch it.
You get to see it, yeah. I mean,
that's the only problem.
The way the course flooded on Saturday, I mean, I've
yeah.
never ever seen it like that.
Earth? I bet they were like, that needs resolving. You see the green on 12.
Yeah,
it's just waterlogged.
By the way, a massive shout out to the greenskeeping team there, who managed to get that course in the condition they got it on the Sunday. Like the balls weren't even picking up mud on the fairways when they were pitching in. It was unbelievable how they managed to get it after that.
Hair dries.
It's like irrigation system, isn't it?
It must be unreal. Under that course, there must be a network of drainage tunnels.
Yeah,
there must be like the London sewage system under that course by now. Just there's probably some poor spot in Augusta where people wake up in the morning and say, where has this lake just come from?
Yeah.
What has just happened here?
They've just squeegeed it all the way off the golf course.
all downhill. It was absolutely unreal how they managed to get it in that condition. So, yeah, would they move it? No, I don't think so.
What do we think of Sam Bennett?
Great story.
I mean, if he's swinging like that in 5 years' time, he might be going the Zalatoris route and being surgery, I think, because his back is getting into some positions.
It's a big bend, isn't it?
Oh, my.
Yeah, he...
so dissect that swing for us, Pete, as someone who knows.
Would you coach that, Pete?
Yeah.
So if you've not seen the Master, you've not seen Sam Bennett swing, you probably the closest comparison is probably going to be Joaquin Niemann.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
yes.
Currently players.
Yeah. So coming through the ball, his kind of lead hip, his left hip, is so far behind him and so far out of the way that he can maintain his right arm being bent all the way through impact. It helps if you can get in that position to stabilize the face. But you are right. It is a movement that puts so much pressure on like your hips and your spine.
It's remarkable how he gets there, really.
Like what he is going to be like in 10 years. It's an open question, because this is I'm not going to say that it's only happened in the modern era, but that type of hip movement, that type of pressure that they're putting on their backs, it does seem to be becoming more and more of a commonplace thing with the younger golf pros, because they have the athleticism to train their bodies to swing like that, and they're getting into those positions more and more common, and it is allowing benefits as far as what it can do to the golf swing, what it can do to ball flight and all the rest of it, performance, but the long-term effects of it, that's what we don't really know.
Yeah.
And now he's going to go from playing 4 rounds of golf, which is also incredible for an amateur, to get through played amazing, only amateur to make the cut, so that's quite nice for him to be
nice.
leading amateur. He's like, I can shoot whatever I like now, and I'm still going to get into
I'll
that
just
clubhouse.
hack it round and enjoy myself.
But then he's to say that he's going to have to go play 36 holes the next day. That's 6 holes, 6 days of golf.
Yeah. That's what happens when you're playing a college team and you got, they're going to play. Did you play at Texas?
Texas A&M.
Yeah. So they've got a match coming up. You've got to go and grind, brother.
Did you see when they were getting in the presentation when Jim Nantz was sort of doing his dialogue about Sam Bennett, and then he said something like, "Oh, and it's so good to see a guy who's like still at school or whatever." And Jon Rahm and Scotty Scheffler's faces, they like both wins like, "Oh, you're still at college, aren't you? Like, you're really young." They were like, it was almost like they'd forgotten that he was, which kind of is probably a good indictment to him, in that like he just acted so much like a pro, and they just didn't realize this guy's still an amateur. He's still at school.
Very, very mature, very grown up. Got a bit of cocky about him as well, to be fair.
Have to, though, haven't you?
Yeah.
Got to back yourself.
You don't get to that point without being like that a little bit.
Never forget, though, that Jordan Spieth was younger than Bennett when he won his first Masters.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But you think about like...
He was quite good, wasn't he?
Come back to us.
He was quite good.
Please.
Be who you used to be. Come back to us.
Jordan, return.
Oh, my God. That... I was trying to find the picture again when Speith hit it into the water. I think it was on the second round. On 13, he was going for like that ridiculous shot out of the trees. And he was chatting to Mike Greller's caddy all the way, like explaining all these shots, all these options. And you could see that Mike was like, you just lay up, lay up, just lay up.
Just chip it out.
And he was talking himself into it, hit it into the water. And Mike Greller just like hands him a ball out of his pocket. Just like, I knew this was going to happen.
Yeah.
What are you doing to me?
I had it ready.
Even I was watching it with Carly, my missus, and she doesn't really watch a lot of golf. And I think they were walking over the bridge at 12, and like the background mics were just hearing Jordan Spieth.
Oh, I saw that bit. Yeah,
and he just chatting.
Was that on the last round?
Yeah,
because I remember he hit his shot and he put it to about 15 feet or something, so it was a good shot, and he'd hit this ball and he went, "Oh, I hate when this course is playing soft."
And it was just I remember that. He was just chatting, and like Carly turned around and said, "Does he always talk this much?" I'm like, yep.
Yes, he does. He never shuts up.
I was like, oh God, it's so funny. I mean, I think from Sam Bennett, obviously being unexpected up there on top of near the top of the leaderboard, obviously faded away a touch. A few players who didn't fade away, who managed to stick around.
Anti-fade away, some would say.
Yes, drawn towards the top of the leaderboard, some would say.
Sucked up.
Are 3 LIV players in the top 6.
Yeah.
Admittedly, probably not the most popular.
I was going to say the 3 most likable LIV golfers of all time.
So you had Brooks and Mickelson, who were tied second in the end, and then you had Patrick Reed up there as well.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, these are all golfers who are major winners. Mickelson, Reed obviously won the Masters before. Courses that they know really well. But for me, it certainly added something to the week to have players from rival tours competing against each other. Think what you want about, LIV, and if you like it and not, I'm still kind of leaning towards not really liking it, but it did add something to have that element to it.
Yeah,
of
for
rival
sure.
tours going at each other. And I think that if you look at what they've done, they're going to get world ranking points for these major finishes.
Good.
They will get major starts from finishing so high up in a major as well, like guaranteed, even though they've won majors before, so they'll have
those guys are okay.
But having those top finishes, it does open up that kind of question of, well, these guys aren't getting world ranking points for their LIV play at the moment. Is this something that should be looked at? Is it a time to kind of reassess how players are ranked? Because on the face of it, you've got to say it's not fair that if you are playing a certain level of golf, that you're not getting up there in the world rankings. It kind of makes the world ranking system a little bit not fit for purpose, potentially.
Well, like why would we trust something that is but the evidence doesn't support. Like if you were a scientist and you were like trying to do an experiment and the outcome was completely against what you thought was going to happen, you would be like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I've got it wrong and I should reassess how I think about this. If the world ranking points don't suddenly go, oh, wow, we should offer these guys at least something, or we need to change our formula, or something needs to change, because out of the top 6, half of them were from a tour which now, it is going to be around. It's a thing that's going to happen. And we're kind of living in the kind of development era of that tour, and, still talking about, don't know whether I like it or not, whatever. It's going to be here. They need to work out a way to include those guys, because if they come in and, win one of these tournaments, like, what the rankings are not a direct reflection of the evidence of the weekend.
Yeah, I try and go out my way to disagree with you, but I think you're right. I mean, I understand the arguments against LIV. I really, really do. And like I said, I'm kind of favouring one side of the fence about it, but it seems weird that you can have players of an obvious quality not being ranked higher in the world game because of the tour that they play on. It is tricky. I think obviously because the fact that you've got one tour is not playing 4 rounds and not making a cut, they feel like there's a segregation between the two, and you can't put them together. There's something that you can't say, oh well, they're not completing a proper round of a proper tournament or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I mean, again, on the flip side of that, you wouldn't have said that Reed or Mickelson were top 50 players coming into this week. They weren't playing of that caliber already.
Yeah.
So I don't have a feeling of like, oh well, these guys are now top 20 golfers.
Yeah.
Because anyone can put together a 7 under, 8 under round. No disrespect to the two of them.
Anybody.
I can.
Anybody.
Well, no, but like I mean like any professional golfer. Like put me out there. I'm gonna score 8 under. Put me in Cantlay's position. I've won the green jacket, basically.
Yeah, let's be completely honest.
But yeah, it's right. Like it feels odd, and it's someone like Brooks. Like Brooks showed that he's something like 100th something in the world or something stupid.
He jumped up big time after that win.
So it's they need to find a way of how they balance it out, and it's going to be whether they just say, look, it doesn't matter. They're just going to get world ranking points for playing in the LIV events, which is probably the best way to do it, because I don't really see how they can go about it. They can't. I don't think if they start making it that there's like half points of, oh well, it's not a 4-round tournament, so you only get half.
So you get 75% of the points you would have got normally.
But then the other thing is that because they've gone to the LIV Tour, they've wanted to go because they don't. Or one of the reasons supposedly is because they want to play less golf. So they're not going to play as many tournaments as the guy that's on the PGA Tour, if the PGA Tour guys decide to play as many as they want. So they are going to drop down the rankings anyway if they got full points, because they're not winning as much and they're not earning as many points all the time.
Okay.
So there's just it's a really tricky blend, I think, for them at the minute. And I think that, for me, I think the only reason why they haven't done it is because they just don't know what to do.
Yeah, they're like...
I don't think it's like, we don't want to. They've stuck their foot in the ground a little bit and decided that, no, we're not going to allow the points. But actually, when you sit around a board table, I don't think actually anyone's coming with like...
they're like, does anyone know any reasons
what
why
are we doing
not?
Yeah, what are we doing here?
These guys are right up the top of this. Doesn't Brooks's exemption run out soon? 2024 potentially.
I'm not sure.
But like
playing in the Masters.
Yeah. Oh no, because he's got. Oh no, maybe his. Did he win the US Open?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that still counts him in. But like, you know what I mean? Like, what if if they don't get the points and these players then aren't high enough in the world rankings to get into the Masters? You're not going to have those guys there who are in the top 6. It's not an accurate representation of the best golfers in the world. You can't say the best golfers in the world are here because some of them aren't.
Yeah, I mean, it will, if things carry on like they are doing at the moment, it will get to that point. It will get to that point where you look and say, well, why isn't Brooks here? Why isn't DJ here?
Yeah, DJ would have torn this up, or like if what if he was here? Yeah,
yeah. So it will get to that point, but There are a lot of smart people about who could figure it out if there is a will to actually do that.
Talk about wills.
Hit me.
Will Zalatoris.
Oh, poor Will.
Poor guy.
Yeah. So Will Zalatoris, like, unreal last year. And one of, I think, probably the brightest talents kind of out there in golf had an injury and has had to have an operation. So I'm right in saying that he's had basically an operation to fix a herniated disc.
Yeah.
Yeah, as he has it fused, or I read his like announcement tweet or whatever it was, like
his retirement tweet.
yeah, safe. I'm not going to be here for the rest of the year. And it does sound like he's had some sort of operation on his back, and that things are looking good post operation. So that's very good to hear.
He's out for the season,
But he's literally said, "Not coming back. I'm not going anywhere."
I mean,
It's not a common thing in golf.
No,
you don't see these "I'm out for the season" tweets like that. This is a football thing. This is an NFL thing. This is a basketball thing. It's like,
yeah, exactly. I mean, golf generally is a sedate, more relaxed sport where big major injuries don't happen that often.
Yeah.
So to see it kind of happen again to a golfer who, let's face it, does put their spine and their back through a lot of stress as they
he's
swing.
another one, isn't he? Yeah.
You know, and again, I'm not a biomechanics expert, so I'm not going to kind of wade in. There's going to be a lot of people who say, yes, it's because of the way he's swinging is why he's got his injuries, and there'll be people kind of swinging in saying, no, it's not. So it's just a shame because he's such a good golfer, and he's a likable guy as well.
Yeah.
You know, he's one of those people who I do actually root for.
Do you think that it's going to necessitate a like swing rebuild in order to, when Woods came back post back surgery, and you're like, swing looks a little different. Like I've had to change very slightly how I swing it because my body can't do those things anymore. You think that's going to be the case for Zalatoris as well?
I mean, potentially, if it is traced back to how he's swinging and it is a swing-based injury, then he probably won't have a choice. You've seen it a little bit with Jason Day. You know, he's had back issues and he's changed the way that he's swinging to relieve some of that pressure. So it is possible, but Zalatoris' swing is unique. Like it's not something which you see with a lot of players. So to change something that extreme, it's going to be tricky. But whatever happens, I just want him to come back.
Yeah,
healthy,
yeah.
Do you want
a slightly hot take, a mild take?
Oh God!
I think this might be the best thing that could have happened to him.
Wow.
And the reason I say that is because this is going to give him a lot of time to practice his putting.
I don't think that's going to help. I don't think that amount of time out is going to give him any kind of help at all.
Maybe this is the because when Woods was out and he was like, I've chipped and putted a lot because like that's all I can do. Well,
I really thought you were going to say like he's going to start to think about his game. He's going to like get into that right mindset.
Oh, no.
He's going to like literally just to practice his short game.
Look, get that wobbly stroke out of your game.
I don't think that's going anywhere.
Wobble City.
And that's one of the reasons why I like him because he's got a bit of a human element to him.
He's a bit wild.
Yeah. Well, no, it's just like he struggles with his putting. It's the most relatable thing in golf ever to be nervous over a 3-foot putt.
There's different guys, isn't there? Like throughout the years when the cameras would cut to someone. So like when you had like Mickelson had to play a really floppy, loopy shot over a bunker or something, and you're just waiting for something great to happen. When you turn to Will Zalatoris on the TV and he's over like a 2-footer, and you're just sat waiting like
you're like tensed and wincing.
Let's see the wobble.
This is going to get wild.
The only other kind of big the other big withdrawal story is Tiger. But
Wasn't good.
however,
That was not
23rd
pretty.
consecutive cut.
He's now tied for the record, I believe.
Unbelievable stuff. I mean, as a golfer, as a swing, as a performer, he still got it. It's just, it was a tough watch. It was a tough watch seeing him injured. Just almost unable to walk.
Yeah.
And it was, I think the whole golfing world was looking at that and everyone felt just a bit sad. Like they just felt like the moment in time where you're watching like one of your heroes, one of the best golfers who've ever played the game, arguably the best, reaching a point where he can't walk on a golf course.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
Like when I've never had a pet dog, but when your pet dog starts to get really old and you're like, gonna have to put this down at some point.
We putting Woods down.
No. You two are getting so dark today on some of these takes. My God.
No, you're right. It was kind of hard to watch him limp and struggle and not being able to bend down and pick the ball out of the hole. But you're like, then also you're like, there could also be some magic at some point. So I was still glued to it, even though it was hard to watch.
Well, we spoke about it last week, and I think Kieran might have mentioned what could be the favour of Woods for going into the Masters. What kind of tee times will be good so he can avoid, how can he get his body into the best shape? This weather would have been
not
disastrous on his body.
Yeah, the list of things that he didn't want to happen all happened.
Yeah, I mean, they made reference to it quite a lot, and I've seen a couple of tweets from other guys that have had sort of reconstructive surgery completely on their body, and how badly that reacts to cold weather. I mean, I remember watching the Ryder Cup in Paris, the Golf National, and they made mention to it then because that was when he came back from the first time.
Yeah, that was at the back.
And how cold weather reacts to those reconstructed parts of the body, and it just wasn't. You could see how. I mean, he was in real trouble, wasn't he? He couldn't walk.
Yeah, well, when he withdrew Southern Hills, who was playing with him? Because there was a news article I saw, a tweet. I can't remember who was playing with him, but they said that he withdrew from Southern Hills because one of the screws in his leg broke through his skin.
Ooh.
Is it worse than we think it is?
I think it is.
I think it must be much worse than what we're seeing.
Well, you would say that with Tiger, a lot of people, when they saw him limping, like a lot of people were obviously like just really sad. A few people were saying, "Oh, he's just playing up to it." But then stories come out like saying he had to withdraw from Southern Hills because like a screw came through his leg from his broken bones. And you'll talk about someone who had a broken leg and still won a major.
Exactly.
We're talking about someone here who, for me, does not pull out of a tournament, does not play possum like with an injury. If he's hurt, he's hurt. Yeah. That's the viewpoint that I have of it. I think I'm right. I might not be. So if he's going to pull out of a tournament, if he's limping that badly, he was obviously in a lot of pain. It's just so sad.
Yeah, but like the fact that him and Phil, like one of them had one leg, and one of them is 52 years old, and both of them still wiped the floor with McIlroy this weekend is absolutely unreal.
Oh, Rory.
What are we going to do with you?
There was just something in his gait this week that just inspired absolutely zero confidence.
He was coming in so nicely as well. Like he'd played so well at the match play. Only obviously taken the week off for the Texas Open. Everyone was feeling good. He put the new putter in the bag. The
short on the driver shot.
He was driving it well. He was still, despite 2 rounds of golf, I think he was still top 2 shots of strokes gained shots off the tee.
Yeah, I mean, that's never going to go away from him. It's just it's just so. It just left with a feeling of being a little bit hollow by it because every year that he comes in when he's playing great golf, like the expectations obviously rise, but the biggest problem I think maybe is the expectations for him. Like personally, probably get so high that it is obvious now that it has become like a big mental block. There is a barrier here that's just not allowing him to play how he obviously desperately wants to.
I think you tweeted something after he was knocked out that runs quite true, and I think he needs to go win a different major. I think he needs to win another one.
Yeah.
Even maybe 2.
That's interesting, yeah.
And
get the ball rolling a little bit
again. Yeah. I think he's almost like, I mean, he obviously competes at the top of most majors every year. We saw that with the Open last year. He just needs to get that winning major feeling back, I think, because every time he comes to this Masters, he might, I don't know, obviously I'm not inside his head, but like, I would imagine he would feel there is this kind of like, this is the major, and then the others are other tournaments I've won, and I've won them before, and I can win them again. And you see that in his performance. Yeah. And now it's just in him now, isn't it?
It's just belief.
Yeah.
You don't have to be an elite performing athlete to understand that if you believe in yourself, that if you trust what you're doing, the chances are you're more likely to succeed.
Yeah.
If you go into any situation with that scar tissue and with the kind of almost not exactly understanding, but more of a resignation that this might just not be possible, the chances are that is going to manifest itself and you're not going to win. Like if you go into a tournament and you absolutely believe that you deserve to win it, that you can win it, the chances are that you have a much better chance. It was like when Seve won. Yeah. Seve won one of his Masters, and like one of his friends made him an audio tape, as it was a cassette back then.
Oh wow! What's
and
that?
he what's that? Imagine, you know, it's not even an MP3, is it? Whatever it is now, a WAV format. Made Seve a recording of commentary when his friend was basically pretending to be a commentator at the Masters, and he was describing exactly how Seve had won the Masters, and he described his walk up the 18th, the adulation of the crowd, and that feeling and that moment when Seve would get that green jacket, and Seve listened to it before he got to the Masters. And he said it was actually, I think he's in his autobiography actually, he's saying it was actually a little bit of an anticlimax when he won that Masters because he already knew he was going to win. He listened to it so much, he knew he was going to be the champion.
Listen, the importance of the mental game cannot be understated. Like we've seen it in Rory, we've seen it in reverse in other people who have just believed themselves to victory. Like Bob Rotella and the kind of understanding of and Joseph Parent, the understanding of the mental game has done wonders for golfers all over the world, particularly at the kind of normal, you know, mid to high handicap level where you're like, okay, cool. You've got to put aside the maybe slightly failed shot that you just had and just like forget about it. Like Rahm said, you know, he quoted Ted Lasso and said, you think like a goldfish. You got to be a goldfish.
Yeah.
And Rory just didn't have it. Like you could see in his brain that he was still thinking about he flew the green, and then on his next tee shot, you could tell he was still thinking about he'd hit it too far, or, you know, it's just, the mental game is so important, and it's just it's the only bit that he hasn't got currently, because he can hit the ball far, he can hit the ball straight if he needs to, he can shot shape, he can, you know, his putting's got better since the new putters come into the bag, and the only thing he hasn't got is the belief in himself or the kind of understanding that the mental game is actually the bit he's lacking on.
I think he's self-aware enough to know that he's not quite there to actually, you know, he's not psychologically strong enough in this department to actually get over the line in the Masters. He's obviously mentally strong enough to win golf tournaments because he's continually doing it. So if he can get another major under his belt, I think that belief will be a little bit stronger. And it's not so much with Rory. I don't think it's so much that he doesn't believe he can win, because I think he does, because he's an elite athlete and everybody knows that. It's more having that trust in himself that he can get over the line again in these big events. So, you know, we talk about Bob Rotella. There's a book, kind of Fearless Golf. What's his name? Valenti?
Doctor something. We'll put it in there. We'll put it. Yeah. It'll come up on the screen. A picture of it.
Gio Valenti, I think. Which I read a while ago. But also with Rory, there's a book called Ego is the Enemy, which kind of he's talked about quite a lot.
Right.
But all that and kind of Ego is the Enemy and those kind of books are about, it's not so much tricking yourself. It's more about putting in the work and believing based on past experiences and victory.
Right.
So if he has the win, say, in any of these next three majors, maybe grab a couple again, let's hope. If he can do that, then he has something very, very recent to draw upon.
Got you.
So it's not like going into the Masters, because he does this every year where he says something different, like he tries something different. Like he literally switched putters a few weeks ago, and everybody knew that was because of the Masters. Like you can say what you want. You can say about he's going into the Dell match play with it, all the rest of it.
Yeah,
he was
that was the practice run for the Masters.
Yeah, exactly. He was trying to get those good feelings back. So by the time he got to the Masters, his putting was on fire. That's what he was doing. But it takes more than that. It takes more. It takes victories. It takes that constant reaffirmment of being one of the best players in the world at the bigger stages to be able to draw upon that experience and win. And it's going to be hard because at the Masters, at the Open, say, if he's in contention, he can, even though the memories are a little bit distant, draw upon the fact that he has won this tournament, that he knows how to get it across the line. US Open, exactly the same. USPGA, exactly the same. The Masters, as soon as he goes into his memory backs from this tournament, all he is met with is a stream of near misses and obviously a real big
miscuts,
blow up
Yeah.
when he should have won it.
Yeah.
So it's difficult. It's
I
difficult.
wonder, shall we volunteer to record him a fake commentary of him winning for next year?
Yeah.
Yeah, should we do it?
Send it to his team.
So one of
And there
you,
he is, McIlroy, walking up the 18th with a 19-shot lead on the second place.
Can I get one of you guys to record like my morning so it gets me out of bed at the right time? That would be great.
That's just one screaming at you. Get up.
Maybe
Anyway.
that's why I need to go to sleep with you just being like, you will get up at 8 o'clock in the morning. Yes, I will.
Just set your alarm, you weirdo.
I do set an alarm.
Anyway, so I think that's probably enough of us probably talking
Harping on against Rory.
absolute crap about what Rory's thinking.
Next year.
Next year is the one.
I think we have to live in a reality where maybe Rory never wins again, but never wins a major again.
Well,
That could just be...
Talking about him being able to draw upon memories, he's got an open venue this year that he's at, which he's already won at. So I think he'll be all right
absolutely.
there.
Oh, God, that'd be great. Just imagine if he did it. And then he'd probably win the FedEx Cup by like 6 million. Oh, Rory. I think probably a few things to draw upon at the end of this. I think there was a few things that definitely went wrong apart from Rory. You had...
And the tree.
And, I mean, you had literally patrons almost getting crushed by falling trees. Like, we can't overlook that. And
That could have been so bad.
it was lucky, first of all, that the trees fell relatively slowly so people could see.
There was a couple of warning branches. There was like a few like trickled,
Yeah.
and then they knew to disperse. Because
And
if they didn't disperse, then that could have been really bad.
There was one guy who was literally in between them as they fell. Like, he managed to get in a position where they missed him, but he was in between them.
No way.
So, and
You know in cartoons where the building's falling and they always run like away from it, and you're like, run sideways
Yeah.
for God's sake. This guy didn't even do anything.
he looked-
just stood there like this.
Do you know what's come to mind? Not that we reference Lord of the Rings enough in this. Is in the,
Fire
in
a warning shot past the bosun's ear.
in the Return of the King when they're fighting on Minas Tirith and they throw that piece and like the lead orc like stands there the whole time, and then at the
Spits on
last minute goes, "Ah!" and it goes,
Slice it in.
So
that's what this guy did.
That is definitely not what this guy did.
With his crippled hand.
He managed
Form Rex.
to just avoid. What are you talking about? He just managed to avoid these falling trees, and it was lucky because those trees fell as well, like onto a part of the course where there was actually not that many people about. Like, fell onto the actual hole.
Yeah.
So it could have been. I mean, we could have a bit of a laugh about it now, but it could have been really bad.
That's the
Like,
thing. Yeah, I'm glad we can because wow.
There was a guy in the TV tower. The trees fell just behind he had in like one of the little green camera tents, and you can see it land. And he goes, "Oh bloody hell, what was that?" And he comes out of his tent and he's like, "Oh, 3 trees fell down right next to me and could have killed me."
God, honestly, it could have been so much worse. But again, the weather was extreme. So fingers crossed that's the last we kind of see of that. And I think something else which really didn't go well, and I think was very poorly handled. So you had Sandy Lyle, Larry Mize playing their last Masters, that talked about how it was going to be their last. You had Sandy Lyle on the last green
Yeah.
of the second round over his last putt ever in the Masters, and they called it.
Yeah.
So he couldn't put out. I couldn't believe it. So he was there. He was in front of a gallery, that had gathered on the 18th that would have given him the send-off that he deserved as a past champion, as one of the best players, certainly the UK's produced, but generally one of the best global players that there's been.
Yeah.
And they made him come back in the morning when there was
For a
nobody
10-foot
there.
putt.
So weird.
I understand that rules are rules, and when the horn goes, you've got to get everyone off the course. It is for safety reasons. But they had leeway. Giving him an extra 3-4 minutes on that green to put out would not have endangered anybody. And it was such a bad
Common
way.
sense has to prevail at some point, doesn't it?
It has to. I mean, surely, we all know that the Masters and the committee there is a little bit of a law unto themselves. Like, they could do whatever they wanted to.
Yeah.
And they had the opportunity there to make a statement, say, Sandy, just put out, take the adulation,
and then we'll blow the horn.
Yeah, or even because normally what would happen is when there's a horn blown, unless there's an immediate danger. So, if lightning had struck down on the 18th, it's like, all right, everyone needs to get off this right now. But it was a warning which was blown in anticipation of what was coming.
Yeah.
So, what normally would happen if you blow it like that, you can be given the option to actually put out. So just let him do it.
Yeah,
it's such.
It was a shame, wasn't it?
Let him put it out. Get a nice clap. Take his hat off. Wave to the crowd. Then he also gets that clip to play to. It goes in documentary about his life or whatever, and very.
Which blends into,
do you know what I mean?
The putt falls, and then
you know what I mean.
The life and times of Sandy Lyle.
But you know what? Now that'll be the end of the story, won't it? Like, the last time he played the Masters.
Yeah.
He's doing a theme tune.
That is the theme tune. That is the Masters theme tune. It is it is a tournament. It is a place that allows these stories to be created. That's one of the best things about Augusta, is that you get these stories because it's in a set location. It's the scene of movies which play out every single year, and they fluffed it.
Yeah, they ruined that one.
They really did cock that one up. So
how are they going to get around there when they make the biopic of Sandy Lyle's life on the film?
It's just editing him actually holding it and walking off.
What I would say, and again, literally no evidence to back this up, if it was Tiger's last Masters, would they have made him mark it and leave?
It's a good point. I don't hate it.
Interesting.
I don't think they would.
Not a chance.
No.
Imagine if Rory was about to win it with that putt and they blew the horn, so you have to come back tomorrow.
That would have been dramatic. That'll
be a tough sleep.
Just over that, you got a 4-foot putt to win, left to right down the hill.
I think I'd have Bob Rotella. We'd have a sleepover, and I'd get him just to speak confidence to me. Yeah.
I don't think I'd go to bed.
You will make it, Rory.
I'll be on that putting green all night, just knocking him down.
Well, there were a few changes to the course, especially the 13th tee being moved back 50 yards into that little. This is one of the mental things about Augusta. Like, they literally made that tee, which was new, shifted back 50 yards. They'd moved the road to get that in.
Yeah, didn't they buy the land behind it?
Yeah. I think they literally bought half of Georgia to move this tee back 50 yards.
They're buying land every year, aren't they?
Yes, they're just getting more and more and more. Yeah. And they managed to make it look like it had been there for 500 years. Yeah. It was unbelievable. Yeah. And generally, what did we think?
As if it made the hole better or worse?
Yeah.
I think better. I do think better. It certainly made it more of a, is it a 2-shot or a 3-shot hole?
Yeah, I liked the debate that people were having.
And then you had someone like Rahm who hits a great tee shot off it, and then is then warranted for hitting his second shot into that green.
Yeah, there was a couple of times where that happened, where you're like, oh, okay, that tee shot. Yeah. Now you can go for it. I think Hovland maybe had one in the first round. But then there was a few people who, their tee shots weren't quite as good, and they're like, right, okay, cool, now I do have to lay up.
What did you think? Not as keen?
Again, I think maybe because of what was happening on Sunday, it didn't make it as exciting. There was a...
Do you feel it made it less birdieable?
Oh, 100%, yeah. I mean...
Well, that's what they wanted.
Yeah, which is exactly what they wanted. And they did make it into a much tougher approach. For me, there was a lot more shots which were finishing to the left of that green, which left a really tricky chip and a putt. But, yeah, I think it made it, as far as a par 5 is concerned, a better test.
Yeah.
It may have subtracted a little bit from the excitement.
Yeah.
Much less cutting the corner this year.
Yeah, apart from Rahm.
You didn't see many.
Swoops it around.
You didn't see many shots from in those trees if you hit it straight and you just go into that flurry into the.
Is that the Mickelson
That's
trees?
kind of like a renowned sort of. If you don't quite get that ball to draw, you end up in there. Can you go for it? Exactly, Mickelson shot. That's almost an aspect as well with like 16 on the final day, with being able to run it down and stuff. That's almost like a part of Augusta that I kind of know on 13. If you don't quite get that draw, you go into there and it makes it a bit harder.
Was it
kind of took that away?
Was
it
like a 310 run out, and because it was cold, the ball wasn't going? Oh, that was another thing I was going to say. How relatable was it that they were only hitting it like 240, 250 off the tee in the cold? I was like,
oh yeah, when it was cold, yeah.
They are humans.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I think it was Justin Thomas hit one. It was 240, and I was like, I can hit it longer than that.
Yeah, I think that maybe showed about how bad everyone else would have been if they'd have played it on that day.
Got 180.
Yeah, God,
but yeah, so I think the run out, because of the extended tee, the run out into those trees was like 310 or something. So
it took away a part of the course which we've seen so many guys in, and it almost it adds the element of like, oh, that's an area of the course that you don't want to necessarily be, but people find themselves there.
There is a chance that where the tee shots were finishing, they were finishing very much on. There's a massive. Again, it is one of those things where you're like, the slopes aren't as extreme on the TV as they are in real life. Where they were landing those shots, if they were to hit a shot into the green, it is on a huge side slope.
Yeah.
That ball is miles above your feet, which is probably why we're seeing a lot more shots finish left.
Yeah.
So potentially, as the years go by and players get more and more used to hitting from that lie, then we might see a few more exciting shots.
it'll just be like you'll see practice rounds in the kind of early part of the year, people like practicing that lie on purpose to get ready for that shot, won't you?
So I think that'll be. I think it'll get more exciting as people get more and more used to it. But you're just used to kind of seeing shots kind of hit the centre of that green, roll around and get close, or people flight straight at it with a shorter iron. I'm not sure. I'm hoping that it will get more exciting.
Well, I don't think they're going to be shoving it back anymore for a while. I think that this might be it for a little bit.
Well, we'll see.
Well,
you never know with Augusta.
They've still got the option to play from that forward tee, have they not?
It's gone.
They've taken it out completely.
Yeah. They weren't even considering it.
Wow. So the members are screwed as well, are they?
I'm not sure they care that much really about what the members think.
They put the mats out.
Oh yeah, you got to hit it off mats.
Yeah,
God, don't talk to me
Stick
about
the
hitting
winter
off
mats
mats.
out.
Bloody hell. It's coming to that time of the year where the mats need to leave now, though.
Yeah, it won't be too far away.
No more mats.
Well, I think we've chatted about Masters quite enough now. We have going on this year a table and a competition between the four of us, because Kieran isn't here today.
Yeah.
Where we picked our squads for the Masters.
Squads like that.
For the majors for the year. Very simple. We picked 4 players, one of who, when we picked, had to be out of the top 50 in the world. And wherever they finish in the majors this year, that's how many points you're awarded. So, for example, yours truly has Jon Rahm captaining the team. So he got me
little C next to his name.
He got me 1 point.
Great.
Which is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. However, another one of your players who, didn't do very well, 53 points.
Because that was the number of people who got through to the final 3 rounds. So the number of people who make the cut, if your player misses, that's the score that they get. Do we have the points on us?
Right, so I've got it here. Here you go.
Wow, as if by magic.
As if by magic.
Wonderful. So we have, admittedly, Kieran did really well.
Annoyingly well.
Like, we were all giving him stick for picking Brooks in his team, and he finished second, which was really annoying.
Well done.
So Kieran had accumulated points of 2, 10, 26, and 53, because unfortunately,
Zalatoris.
Will Zalatoris is in his team, and he will, because he's out for the season, be getting basically the maximum amount of points every tournament, which is a bit of sad. Jacob, 53.
Yeah.
Who were your missed cuts?
Rory and Moronk. For about 30 seconds at the beginning of the first round, Moronk and Hovland were 2 under through 2.
I was going to say.
Rahm had 4-whacked on the first, and I was like,
I'm going to win this. I'm going to win this thing.
Unbelievable. And then 7 and 16.
Yeah, it was Hovland and Tom Kim.
Mick, 53.
Yeah, Rob McIntyre didn't even make it to the flaming weekend.
But then
Didn't even make it there.
10, 10 and 16.
Yeah,
Pretty
That's
decent.
very good.
Extremely good.
Yeah, and then I had number 1. Thank you, Jonathan. 34, 29, and 53. Molinari missed out by a shot. That's so annoying.
Was it really only one shot in the end?
Yeah, very frustrating.
Oh,
That's
Franny.
annoying.
So Mick is currently leading with 89 points. I'm in second with 91, so very tight there. Then
No, Kieran's in second.
Kieran is second in 91. So 89 Mick, 91 Kieran, 117 for me, and then 129 for Jacob, who's bringing up the rear with his team of choppers.
Rory, you let me down.
With choppers. Now, the real question is, with Zalatoris being out, Kieran has brought up in the group chat that he would like the option to make a substitution.
I'm sure he would.
Of course he would, because otherwise Zalatoris will be getting him maximum points
Yes, he
for
will.
the remaining majors, which if we were all in that situation, we would all be thinking the same. As as captain of the rough cut team, if there were a rough cut team, your name would have a C next to it.
I prefer official adjudicator, but okay.
Okay. Cool. Whatever you want. You can have whatever title you want. You're in charge around here, really.
Okay.
You get to decide if at all he's allowed to make a trade, because he's not here to argue his case.
Very true.
If he's allowed to make a trade, and what the payment for that trade should be.
Ooh.
And we'll argue it out, but you'll have the final say.
Okay. I mean, I think I'm going to have a little bit of time to think about it, because we did say pretty clearly when we picked our teams that if you are picking someone who is likely to get injured, you should not be rewarded for that terrible decision by getting a free hit.
We said it about Woods. We said it about Woods.
We said it about Woods.
Okay.
We said it about Brooks when he picked him, and we said it about Will when he picked him as well. But he was too headstrong to listen. So quite frankly, I'm very much leaning towards letting him live with his decisions. He needs to learn. He's a young man and he needs to grow up.
So you have to learn these life lessons at some point, and this might be an opportunity for learning and growth.
So I'm thinking no, but admittedly, I've only had one coffee today.
Can I put a potential avenue to go forward, and then we can decide?
Go for it.
So my thoughts is obviously Zalatoris was one of his 3 good player picks. It wasn't an outside top 50.
Right. It wasn't a wild
So
card.
I would be happy for him to change it, but he has to take that full hit of the miscut again.
So he's got to get another 53
He's going to get
points.
another 53 points. Or he can change Zalatoris for someone outside the top 50 for half the hit.
That's interesting.
Okay.
It's a potential.
So he gets 53 and do it now, because the other majors maybe will have more people who make the cut potentially. So make him take another 53 whack.
Yeah, but he can pick anyone
And he can have
inside,
anyone he wants.
whoever he wants.
See, he definitely needs to take more points if he wants to make a trade. He has now the benefit of that tournament having happened, and he has the information of that tournament. So if we were, you'd all be all over that. Anyone in the top 10, wouldn't you?
Russell Henley, get him in.
Yeah.
Well, listen, at the end of the day, we'll have to decide, but please let us know.
You'll have to come back and find out.
Yeah. Let us know. Get down to those comments. Messages on our Discord if you haven't joined there already, or on their social media, whatever it may be. But I believe it is time now to draw this Masters review to a close. So like Rahm on that last green, we will look to the heavens, thank the angels for watching over us, say God bless you and good night. Join us next week. Hop over, check out the Golfbidder Challenge. If you haven't already, subscribe to the Rough Cut Golf podcast. Follow us on your favourite podcast providers, and just continue to be the wonderful people that we know you are.
When we hit 10,000, it's going to be a big giveaway. We'll see you then. See you later.
See ya.